Greetings from the Himalayas. I would like to talk today about our youth, about our very young people, let's say below the age of 25, as of 2023, who are inundated with social media and influences much beyond their capacity to process, to hold, and to guide them towards an inner wisdom, which is available, of course, but owing to the nature of this bombardment, it is not enabling the youth to enter their own sacred space, rather. It is propelling them into spaces which are self alienated and self alienating. I'm sorry to sound a bit like the finger of doom here, but I think that this matter is of a serious concern, and people who are young need to become aware of how uh, it is no longer a singular program which is running uh, their mental capacity, but it is a series of parallel programs which are operating in an insidious manner, derailing their minds uh, from anything uh, which can be called integrated. So there is a great inner movement of disintegration and fracture, which is compounding the situation, um, leading these young people to behave and contaminate in a certain way and contaminating their field of perception with mutations which are beyond their own scope of understanding, which is also probably why there is a great and very heavy duty um, isolation of the young person who is trapped in this constant fear owing to this addictive pattern of dopamine source and the fear of not being able to to milk it from sources which become increasingly redundant quickly. They so any subject or any material which may excite the young mind or the young person, its time span of temporariness has become so uh, transient and quick in its um, dissolution that the scramble for uh, a better source of dopamine becomes more urgent, creating a kind of neurotic, um, you know, uh, neurotic thrust of mutant desires which seem to emerge out of this uh, situation. And so the extreme aspect of indulgence uh, becomes more and more needy, you see. And at the same time, there is this whole aspect of education, performance, uh, physical image, beauty, uh, material kind of standards that people may self establish as something that they may hold their personal image in relation to. And of course, then there's the social aspect, peer group, the acceptance, popularity, and whatsoever else. So you see, there are all these uh, multiple and multi-dimensional uh, uh, agencies which are constantly uh, trying to juice that young person who is largely isolated, juice that young person of his vital force. We are coming to energy here now. It They are losing their vital force, which also then means that they are losing their creative flow, which means that their creativity is very, very stunted. Okay, and the main thing that makes life meaningful and that makes our uh, tick and buzz uh, beyond that dopamine. I mean, the actual source of natural dopamine is one's own creative flow, one's own creative um, urgency, that which is fulfilling. It's not a false dopamine kick, it is the real thing. And if our creativity gets stunted or blocked, then we are largely in a dark place, in a place where we are unfulfilled, discontented, and therefore easier to slip and slide into these false situations to get that sense of meaning, you see. And a lot of the youth has become so desperate in their uh, need for this self validation or dopamine kick that they don't even now mind um, knowing the temporariness and knowing the illusory nature of what they enter, including date sex or, you know, uh, interacting at an intimate level with people who are total strangers, uh, knowing that, you know, the 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 excitement would last only until uh, that suspense, and once it's exhausted, it's uh, it's back to square one. You see, so this is becoming uh, a trend which is very uh, de-spirited, because it is something which is stripping the human of his soul, literally. And young people today are very, very uh, susceptible and vulnerable to this aspect of existence leaching into their vital life force, which means, in a very strange and perverse way, it means that the matrix is strengthening its nature of externalized complexity by extracting the life force of its youngest and most promising segment of humanity. Do we see what is happening? Do we see how energy is being misappropriated and how a certain segment of the collective is being marginalized into something terrified and being systematically broken to be fodder for this gigantic matrix feeding on their very souls. And then an on the ground representation of this invisible nature of energy transaction is, of course, um, the physical aspect of human trafficking or the livestock industry. And I'm not trying to promote veganism or vegetarianism or judging this or that, but an on the ground representation of that is pretty much um, elucidated by the brutality of uh, such industries, the invisible and the visible, the socially accepted and the underbelly of a society oblivious to these torturous situations. And then, of course, it comes down to the psychological violence that people levy on each other. So these are very subtle and sobering uh, existential dimensions which need to be delved into and are young and impressionable people and now going into all sorts of individuations and identity crises like the LGBTQ and all that, which is being touted as something very normal. These are nothing but screaming youth trapped in a very physical predicament, alienated from their sacred soul and the meta soul, if I may say. We need to look at all of this in the energetic format that it is being played out on. May we all have the insight required to protect and to remain united with all that is sacred and to be true to that which is our divine duty and calling. Aham Brahmasmi.